It's 1945. The war is over. Hitler is dead. But scattered across the world are ordinary people carrying his blood. His sister working as a secretary, his nephews trying to build normal lives, his nieces hiding in small towns. None of them asked for this burden. None of them chose to be related to history's greatest monster, but they all made the same shocking decision. They would be the last generation. No Hitler DNA would survive them. The story starts in a tiny apartment in Austria, where Paula Hitler, Adolf's younger sister, lived like a ghost. Born in 1896, Paula was just 11 years old when her mother died of cancer. She watched her brother Adolf turn from an angry teenager into something unrecognizable. But here's what will shock you about Paula. She was beaten by Adolf when she was just 8 years old, her own brother. The future dictator was already showing his violent nature on his little sister. When Adolf rose to power, Paula tried everything to disappear. She changed her name to Paula Wolf. She worked quietly as a secretary in Vienna. She avoided Nazi events. She never asked for money or special treatment. Paula wanted to be invisible. But you cannot hide from history when history is your brother. In May 1945, Allied soldiers found Paula hiding in the Austrian mountains. They arrested her immediately. For weeks they grilled her with questions. Where did Adolf hide his money? What were his psychological weaknesses? Did he have escape plans? Paula's answer was always the same 3 words: I knew nothing. The interrogators were frustrated. They expected secrets, confessions, inside information. Instead, they found a broken woman who just wanted to be left alone. After her release, Paula's life became a nightmare of poverty and suspicion. She lived in a single room near Hitler's old mountain retreat. Locals whispered about her. Some believed former SS men were secretly protecting her. Others thought she was hiding Nazi gold. The truth was much sadder. Paula lived on a tiny inheritance from her mother and occasional charity from distant relatives. She rarely left her apartment. She had no friends, no visitors, no normal human connections. In 1959, a British documentary crew somehow convinced Paula to give her only recorded interview. What she said will break your heart. Paula described a childhood filled with fear and violence. She talked about loving a brother who became a monster. She insisted she was just as much a victim as anyone. Her voice was weak, broken, haunted by decades of carrying shame that wasn't hers to carry. Paula Hitler died alone on June 1st. Heart attack. No family at her funeral. No friends to mourn her. But even death couldn't give Paula peace. In 2005, 45 years after her burial, authorities secretly dug up her grave and moved her body to an unmarked location. They erased the last trace of her existence. Even dead, the Hitler name was too dangerous to display. But Paula's story was just the beginning. Her half-sister Angela lived a completely different nightmare. Angela was Adolf's housekeeper at the Berghof, his mountain fortress where Nazi leaders came to kiss his ring. For years, Angela controlled who could see Hitler. She managed his private life. She witnessed conversations about mass murder over dinner. She saw the planning of genocide like it was ordinary business. Angela's world crashed in 1936 when she fell in love with Dr. Martin Hamich and married him without asking Adolf's permission. Hitler's rage was instant and brutal. He cut Angela out of his life completely. The woman who had been his closest confidante became a stranger. He refused to even say her maiden name, calling her only Frau Hamich in letters. Angela went from being one of the most powerful women in Nazi Germany to being completely erased from her brother's existence. The most tragic figure in this story is Geli Raubal, Angela's daughter and Hitler's favorite niece. Geli was beautiful, smart, and full of life. She was also trapped in a golden cage created by her obsessive uncle. Hitler controlled everything about Geli's life, her friends, her activities, her education, even her romantic relationships. Some historians believe Hitler was sexually obsessed with his own niece. The evidence is disturbing and convincing. On September 18, 1931, Geli was found dead in Hitler's Munich apartment, shot through the chest with Hitler's own pistol. The official story was suicide, but the circumstances were suspicious. Geli had been trying to escape to Vienna. She had been fighting with Hitler about her freedom. Some witnesses heard shouting the night before her death. Hitler left town just hours before her body was discovered. Was it really suicide, or did Hitler murder his own niece when she tried to break free? We'll never know for sure. What we do know is that Geli's death changed Hitler forever. He kept her portrait in his private rooms until he died. He visited her grave regularly for years. Some historians believe losing Geli pushed Hitler deeper into the darkness that would consume the world. Angela's son Leo Jr. survived the war but paid a terrible price. He was captured by the Soviets at Stalingrad in 1943 and spent 12 years in brutal prison camps. Hitler actually tried to trade Stalin's son for his nephew, but Stalin refused. When Leo finally returned to Austria in 1955, he was a broken man who wanted only to disappear. He married quietly, had one son named Peter, and lived the rest of his life in complete anonymity. Peter Raubal grew up knowing he was Hitler's great-nephew. That knowledge shaped every decision he made. He never married, never had children, never gave interviews. To this day, Peter lives quietly in Austria, one of the last people on Earth carrying Hitler's DNA. When asked why he remained childless, Peter's answer was simple: the name dies with me. But the strangest branch of Hitler's family tree grew in America, planted by William Patrick Hitler, a man who turned his cursed bloodline into an act of heroism. William Patrick was born in Liverpool in 1911, the son of Hitler's half-brother Alois Jr. In the 1930s, William Patrick saw opportunity in his family connection and moved to Germany, hoping to get rich off the Hitler name. Adolf Hitler hated his opportunistic nephew and blocked every attempt to exploit the family connection. He called William Patrick his loathsome nephew and made sure he got nothing from the Nazi regime. Humiliated and rejected, William Patrick made a decision that shocked the world. He fled to America and enlisted in the U.S. Navy under his real name, William Patrick Hitler. For 2 years, William Patrick Hitler served honorably in the American military, fighting against his own uncle's regime. His story made headlines across America. Here was a Hitler fighting for freedom against fascism. After the war, William Patrick settled on Long Island, married a German-American woman named Phyllis, and took the ultimate step. He changed his family name to Stuart Houston, completely severing ties to his infamous uncle. William Patrick and Phyllis had 4 sons: Alexander, Louis, Howard, and Brian Stuart Houston. These boys grew up in normal American suburbs, but they carried an extraordinary secret. Their parents made sure they understood their heritage and the responsibility that came with it. The 4 brothers made a pact that would echo through history. None of them would have children. The pact held. Howard, the only brother who married, died in a car accident in 1989 without children. Alexander, Louis, and Brian are still alive today, 3 elderly men living quietly on Long Island. They've never given interviews, never written books, never tried to profit from their connection to history. When reporters occasionally track them down, their answer is always the same: we don't discuss family matters. The pattern becomes clear when you examine every surviving member of Hitler's extended family. Every single one made the same choice: no children, no continuation of the bloodline, no risk of passing on their genetic inheritance to another generation. Leo Raubal Jr.'s son Peter never married or had children. Angela's daughter Alfreda had one son, Heiner, who also chose to remain childless. Every distant cousin, every half-sibling's descendant, every person carrying even a trace of Hitler's DNA made the same decision: the bloodline ends here. This wasn't government policy or public pressure. No court-ordered sterilization. No angry mob demanded it. This was voluntary extinction. The people sharing Hitler's blood looked at their inheritance and decided the world would be safer without it. Think about the weight of that decision. Imagine waking up every day knowing you share DNA with history's greatest monster. Imagine the conversations these people had with potential spouses. How do you explain that you can't have children because of who your great-uncle was? How do you tell someone you love that your entire genetic line should end because of one man's evil? The psychological burden must have been crushing. These weren't evil people. Paula was a quiet secretary who wanted to disappear. William Patrick was a war hero who served his country with honor. Leo Jr. was a teacher who survived 12 years in Soviet camps. Peter is a retired engineer who never hurt anyone. Yet they all decided their DNA was too dangerous to pass on. By the 1990s, journalists and genealogists trying to track Hitler's descendants discovered something unprecedented in human history. An entire family had voluntarily chosen extinction. Every living relative had either avoided marriage, changed their name, or decided to remain childless. The Hitler family tree was systematically pruning itself out of existence. The irony is staggering. Adolf Hitler built his entire ideology
ideology around racial purity and genetic superiority. He dreamed of a 1,000-year Reich populated by perfect Aryan bloodlines. He believed genetics determined destiny. Yet the man who worshipped bloodlines left behind relatives so ashamed of their inheritance that they chose to erase it completely. What makes this story even more chilling is that these people didn't choose their burden. They were innocent victims of genetic lottery. None of them participated in Hitler's crimes. None of them deserved the shame they carried, yet they accepted responsibility for something they didn't do, and made the ultimate sacrifice to prevent it from continuing. As we speak, there are maybe 6 people left on Earth carrying Hitler's DNA. They're elderly, scattered across different continents, living under different names. They've never coordinated their decisions, yet they all reached the same conclusion. When they die, the genetic legacy of Adolf Hitler dies with them. This raises disturbing questions about guilt, responsibility, and the nature of evil. Can evil be inherited through DNA? Are we responsible for the crimes of our relatives? These people believed the answer was yes, and they were willing to sacrifice their genetic future to prevent any possibility of their bloodline producing another monster. The Hitler family's decision to extinct themselves might be the most complete victory over evil in human history. They didn't just defeat Hitler's ideology, they made sure his genetic legacy would never have another chance to manifest. They looked at their inheritance and decided some bloodlines are too dangerous to continue. Some argue this decision was unnecessary, that genetics don't determine behavior, that these people could have lived normal lives and raised normal children. Others believe they made the right choice, that some risks are too great to take, that some legacies are too toxic to pass on. What we know for certain is that in approximately 20 years, the last person carrying Adolf Hitler's DNA will die. When that happens, one of history's most infamous bloodlines will disappear forever. Not destroyed by war, revolution, or government policy, but voluntarily extinguished by people who decided their genetic inheritance was too dangerous for the world. The final Hitler descendants live among us right now. They shop in grocery stores, pay taxes, watch television, and go about their daily lives carrying one of history's darkest secrets. They wake up every morning knowing they're the last guardians of a terrible legacy, and they've chosen to take that legacy to their graves. In a world obsessed with family legacy and genetic continuation, the Hitler family chose something unprecedented. They chose to be forgotten. They chose to let their bloodline die rather than risk it living on. They looked at their DNA and decided the world would be safer without it. This is more than just a story about Hitler's relatives. It's a story about the weight of inherited shame, the responsibility we feel for crimes we didn't commit, and the lengths some people will go to prevent history from repeating itself. The Hitler family didn't just survive World War II. They became the final executioners of their own bloodline, ensuring that their uncle's genetic legacy would die with them. The most terrifying part of this story isn't what Hitler did during his lifetime. It's what his family decided to do with their future. They looked at tomorrow and chose to erase themselves from it. That might be the most chilling family decision in human history, and the most morally complex victory over evil ever achieved.